Welcome, beautiful soul. I'm grateful you're here tonight, because this story carries the kind of strength that grows quietly inside a woman long before the world ever notices it. This is the journey of Tasha, a Black woman who didn't have much in the beginning, but she had determination. She learned how to stay steady when money was tight, how to keep her dignity when people doubted her, and how to rise without losing the softness in her heart. Sit with me for a moment, and let your spirit settle. She once studied in a small room under a cheap lamp, worked long shifts at a grocery store, took an internship no one believed she'd survive, recorded videos on a simple setup, and stood on stages where people barely knew her name. You're about to follow a woman who counted every dollar just to survive the week. Years later, that same woman sits in rooms where people wait for her decision, trust her guidance, and study her success. But they don't know what she walked through before reaching those rooms. And tonight, the past she tried to leave behind returns to her door. The morning felt calm when she opened her penthouse door. She was holding her coffee, planning her meetings for the day, when she saw it. A small cardboard box resting on the floor, worn around the edges like it had traveled through too many hands. No shipping label. No delivery slip. No name except one thing that froze her in place. A childhood nickname she hadn't heard since she was 19. Written in blue ink across the top. Her heart didn't panic, but it woke up. She carried the box inside and set it gently on the table, staring at it with the quiet awareness that some things return only when you're strong enough to face them. Before she could open it, her assistant walked in holding a plain envelope. She looked confused, as if she felt something was off. The handwriting matched the name on the box. Same letters, same blue ink, same memory. She opened the envelope first. Inside was a torn piece of notebook paper with one simple line. The words didn't praise her or accuse her. They pulled her back to a version of herself she hadn't touched in years. Then she opened the box. Inside was something she thought no longer existed. Something she once packed away during a chapter she never talked about. Seeing it again made her sit still without speaking. The box and the envelope had arrived on the same morning. Both carried the same handwriting she tried to forget. Both came from someone she believed she had walked away from for good. The woman she used to be was about to meet the woman she had become. And nothing in her day would stay the same after this moment. At 19, she lived in a small studio above a laundromat. It wasn't elegant or quiet. The walls held the warm scent of detergent from the machines downstairs, and the noise from the street drifted through her window at all hours. But it was the only place she could afford when she moved to the city for college, and she treated it like a beginning instead of a limitation. Every morning she rode the bus to her business classes at the community college. Every afternoon she stood behind a grocery store counter, earning just enough to pay rent, buy food, and save a few dollars for emergencies. Nothing about her routine looked impressive, but she trusted it. She came home each night with tired hands, dropped her name tag on the desk, emptied her pockets, and counted the day's earnings one bill at a time. People assumed counting money like that meant she was struggling. She didn't see it that way. To her, it was control. A way to keep her life steady even when things felt unpredictable. Most customers treated her kindly, but some didn't hide their judgments. One afternoon a woman whispered to her friend, wondering aloud if she even knew how to count correctly. They laughed while she stood right in front of them. She didn't react. She finished the transaction with calm hands and a quiet focus that protected her like armor. Moments like that didn't break her. They sharpened her. They reminded her why she was studying finance, why she wanted to understand money deeply, and why she refused to stay small. In the evenings she studied at her little desk, her flickering laptop screen lighting the room. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was trying to build a life where she could breathe without fear. A life where she wouldn't panic every time rent was due. One afternoon she noticed a scholarship flyer taped in the store break room. It asked for grades and a simple essay. She qualified. She tore off the small tab with the website link and tucked it into her notebook. That night she wrote her essay with honesty instead of perfect grammar. She wrote about her goals, her struggles, and her desire to understand money in a real way. 2 days later her manager called her into his office. He held her printed essay in his hand and questioned her dreams like they were too big for someone like her. He told her to stay in her lane. He said people from certain backgrounds shouldn't chase unrealistic ideas. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She walked out of that office with a sharper mind than when she walked in. His belief didn't matter. Hers did. A week later, she opened an email that made her eyes sting. She earned the scholarship. It wasn't huge, but it covered her books and took pressure off her shoulders. She printed the email and taped it to her fridge like a quiet promise to herself. By the end of the semester, something in her had shifted. Her professors saw her effort. Her classmates asked for her help with budgeting. She still counted her money at night, but now she did it with purpose instead of fear. She walked with a stronger step, spoke with more certainty, and studied with a clearer mind. She didn't know what her future would look like, but she knew what it wouldn't be. She wasn't staying in the same place forever. She was building something slowly, steadily, one long day at a time. The new semester began with cold mornings that wrapped the city in a soft stillness. She didn't mind the chill. She liked the feeling of beginning again. She carried her books in a simple tote bag and sat in the same seat each day, taking careful notes with a focus that made her professors notice. She wasn't the loudest student, but she was the one who stayed after class to ask questions and made sure she understood every chapter before moving on. Knowledge wasn't something she wanted to memorize. She wanted to own it. Her grocery store job stayed the same. Long shifts. The same fluorescent lights. The same manager who used his voice to make people feel smaller. But something inside her had changed. The scholarship on her fridge reminded her every morning that progress didn't need permission. Especially not from someone who doubted her quietly or loudly. One afternoon, during a short break, she sat in a quiet corner of the store and opened her notebook. She started writing ideas about money management. Simple thoughts. Small lessons she had learned through her own struggles. She never imagined it would become anything. It was just a way to think clearly about her life. But the words flowed naturally. Her mind settled when she wrote about budgeting and discipline. It felt like she belonged to that world more than the one she stood in every day. That night she returned home to her studio, placed her dinner on the small table, and searched for community events. Workshops, financial talks, anything she could attend without paying. Most sessions cost more than she had, but she looked at every listing anyway. She wasn't discouraged. She bookmarked the few free ones she found and promised herself she would be there, even if she sat quietly in the back. A week later, she attended her first workshop. It was held in a small library meeting room with folding chairs and a whiteboard that squeaked with every marker stroke. The speaker explained credit scores, interest, and basic investing. She listened with full attention, taking notes faster than the presenter could erase the board. Something clicked for her that evening. Money wasn't just a thing people spent. It was something that could move and grow if handled with clarity. When the workshop ended, she approached the speaker with a simple question. He noticed the seriousness in her tone and handed her a list of free online resources. She held the paper gently, the way someone holds something rare. It felt like a door had opened. Not wide, but enough for her to see a path she could follow. On her walk home, she passed a row of expensive apartments with clean balconies and soft lighting. She didn't stare out of envy. She stared out of curiosity. She wanted to understand how people built lives like that. She wasn't chasing luxury. She was chasing stability. She was chasing a life where effort brought results that matched the work she put in. The next morning, her professor announced an optional project. Create a financial plan for an imaginary client. Most students groaned. She felt excitement rise in her chest. She wanted to explore the topic deeper than the assignment required. She created a plan not for an imaginary client, but for herself. A 5-year budget. A savings path. A debt-free plan. A small investment strategy. When she submitted the project, her professor called her over after class. He told her the plan didn't look like student work. It looked like something used in real financial offices. She thanked him quietly, but inside she felt a warm confirmation. This wasn't imagined talent. It was real. It was earned. A few days later, during her afternoon shift, her manager walked into the break room where she was writing in her notebook. He gave her an aisle assignment that wasn't her responsibility. He spoke with the same tone that tried to shrink her. She looked up calmly and nodded. Not because she accepted the treatment, Because she knew this job was temporary. She wasn't staying here long enough for his voice to shape her future. That night she walked into her apartment and stood in the center of the room. The same walls that once felt safe now felt tight. She had outgrown this chapter, even if she still lived inside it. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and searched for jobs in finance. Entry-level positions, paid internships, anything that connected her to the world she wanted to be part of. Most listings required skills she didn't have yet. That didn't scare her. She kept reading. She kept imagining. She kept learning. At class 2 days later, her professor stopped her near the door. He held a small card with a website written neatly across the front. He asked if she had ever considered applying for a competitive internship program he recommended to his best students. She blinked, unsure if she heard him correctly. No one had ever suggested something like that to her. He placed the card in her hand with a simple nod. "You have the discipline for this. You should try." She held that card all the way home. Her fingers pressed around the edges as if it might disappear if she loosened her grip. When she reached her room, she placed it next to the scholarship letter on the fridge. She took a deep breath and whispered something she needed to hear. "Be ready for change." She wrote the same line at the top of a fresh notebook page. Then she created a checklist. Update resume. Write internship essay. Prepare references. Study financial software basics. Stay steady. She looked at those words and felt something settle inside her. She wasn't scared of change anymore. She wasn't intimidated by the next step. She was finally ready to take it. The morning she decided to start the internship application, she woke before her alarm. The sky outside her window was still dim, touched only by a faint blue light. She sat up slowly, letting the quiet fill her room. It felt like the kind of morning that asked for a decision. She made tea, placed her notebook on the table, and opened her laptop. The application page sat there waiting, simple at first glance but heavy with possibility. She read every requirement twice, then began typing her answers with a steady rhythm, choosing honesty over perfection. She didn't write about success. She wrote about effort. She wrote about consistency. She wrote about the discipline she built from years of counting dollars at a grocery register and studying late in a small studio that often felt too cold in winter and too small in summer. By afternoon, her essay was complete. She didn't edit it 10 times or chase complicated vocabulary. She read it once, breathed out, and clicked submit. A quiet sense of peace settled over her. Not excitement. Not fear. Something steadier than both. She had taken a step forward, and whether the world noticed or not, she knew it mattered. That same week she kept living with the same discipline she always carried. She worked her shifts. She studied. She saved small amounts. Her life didn't speed up overnight. It stayed grounded, familiar, and slow in the way all real growth feels when you're living inside it. But something in her posture changed. She walked into class with more confidence. She answered questions without hesitating. Her professor noticed. A few classmates noticed too. One girl asked her to join a study group, something that had never happened before. She didn't say yes out of loneliness. She said yes because she was beginning to understand that progress sometimes needed community, even if it was small. 2 weeks after sending the internship application, she received an email during her break at work. She saw the sender's name and held her breath before opening it. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but anticipation. When she read the first sentence, her eyes softened. "Congratulations. You have been selected for the first interview round." She sat still for a full minute. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her. The break room smelled faintly of old coffee and cleaning spray, but none of it reached her. She felt something lift inside her chest, something like validation, something like the quiet voice inside her whispering, "I told you this was possible." She prepared for the interview with the same steadiness she used for everything else. She studied financial terms, practiced common questions, and wrote notes in her journal each night. Not once did she let herself imagine rejection. Not because she was overconfident, but because she refused to speak fear into her goals. The interview day arrived with a clear sky and soft sunlight. She wore her cleanest white blouse and pressed trousers that fit neatly at the waist. Her clothes were simple but carried dignity. She walked into the office with her back straight and her hands calm. The building lobby was larger than anything she had stepped into before. Marble floors, tall windows, people in tailored suits moving with purpose. She didn't let the environment shrink her. She reminded herself that preparation gave her the right to stand anywhere. The interview panel consisted of 2 women and 1 man. They greeted her politely. She answered each question thoughtfully, using real experiences instead of memorized lines. She talked about working long hours while studying. She talked about budgeting in tight months and learning financial discipline from lived reality. She spoke with calm confidence. She didn't try to impress. She simply told the truth. At the end, one of the interviewers smiled in a way that felt genuine. "You have a strong sense of responsibility. It shows." She walked out of the building with a quiet pride warming her from the inside. She didn't need applause. She didn't need anyone to tell her she did well. She knew she had shown them who she truly was, and that was enough. 2 days later, the acceptance email arrived. She read it twice, each word sinking gently into her spirit. She pressed her palm against her chest and closed her eyes. This time she didn't sit still. She allowed herself a small smile. The kind that rises slowly because you work too hard to celebrate loudly. She called no one. She didn't broadcast it online. She didn't post a story or share a screenshot. She simply thanked God, made herself a warm cup of tea, and wrote the date in her notebook. Her new chapter would begin in 6 days. That night she sat on her bed and thought about the little girl she used to be, the one who counted coins on a table, the one who avoided asking for help, the one who stood in long grocery lines with exact change pressed into her palm. She imagined telling that girl that one day she would walk into a finance office as an intern, not because someone opened a door for her, but because she worked and prayed and kept going when things felt heavy. She turned off the light and lay down, her thoughts calm and full. For the first time in a long time, she fell asleep feeling like her future was inching closer. Not with noise, not with luck, with intention. And she was ready for whatever the next morning would bring. Her first day at the internship came with a mix of nerves and focus. She woke early, made tea, and stood in front of her mirror for a quiet moment. Her clothes were simple and clean. Her hair was neat. She didn't try to look expensive. She tried to look prepared. That was enough for her. She gathered her notebook, slipped her pen into the side pocket of her bag, and stepped outside with the kind of determination that carried her through every hard year before this one. The building lobby felt different now that she belonged there. People moved quickly with folders in hand, greeting colleagues and discussing numbers she wanted to understand more deeply. She walked to the reception desk and introduced herself. The woman behind the counter gave her a warm smile and handed her a small badge with her name printed clearly. Seeing her name on that thin piece of plastic made her pause for a moment. It wasn't fancy, but it meant she had earned a place in this world. Not through shortcuts or connections, but through steady, quiet work no one else ever saw. A coordinator led her down a hallway lined with framed photos of the company's achievements. Each frame held people who looked confident, sharp, and certain of their goals. She didn't feel small walking past them. She felt motivated. She wanted to learn what they knew and understand the decisions they made every day. When she entered the training room, a few interns were already seated at the long table. They came from different universities and backgrounds. Some had parents in finance. Some already had internships before. She didn't compare herself. She took a seat near the window and opened her notebook. The orientation began with introductions. When it was her turn, she kept her voice calm and honest. She spoke about her interest in finance, the classes she was taking, and her desire to understand money from the inside out. She did not mention her grocery job or her late nights of budgeting. She didn't hide it out of shame. She simply chose to share what mattered for this moment. Later, the interns were assigned mentors. She was paired with a woman named Mariah, someone with a clear and firm voice who carried herself with quiet authority. Mariah explained the basic structure of the internship and what would be expected over the next 8 weeks. She gave practical advice, not sugar-coated encouragement. It was the kind of guidance she appreciated because she knew real support didn't always come wrapped in comfort. Throughout the week, she learned how to analyze reports, track financial patterns, and create simple projections. She wasn't the fastest in the room, but she was the one who asked the right questions. She stayed back after sessions to review her notes. She watched how experienced analysts worked, how they explained their decisions, how they caught errors that others missed. Every day she grew more certain that this field felt natural to her. Not because she understood everything immediately, but because she enjoyed the process of understanding. By the third week, her work caught Mariah's attention. She completed an assignment with a level of clarity that surprised the team. Instead of celebrating loudly, she listened quietly as Mariah pointed out the strengths in her report. When Mariah said she had potential for real growth, something inside her softened. She was not used to praise. She was used to surviving. Hearing someone recognize her talent felt strangely new. But her life outside the internship didn't magically become easy. She still worked part-time at the grocery store. She still studied late into the night. She still managed her money carefully. Her body was tired, but her spirit stayed steady. Every long day felt like an investment. Every morning she told herself she was building a life beyond this exhaustion. One evening, after a long shift, she returned to her studio and dropped onto the bed. The room felt smaller than before, like she had grown beyond its limits. She looked around at the peeling paint, the narrow bathroom door, the sink that sometimes leaked. She remembered when this tiny space felt like safety. Now she understood it was only a stepping stone, not her destination. She sat at her desk and opened her notebook. She wrote down her goals for the next few months. Increase savings. Build a stronger resume. Learn more about software tools. Stay consistent. She didn't write anything unrealistic. Her goals were simple and clear. She believed in realistic progress. She believed in earning the future step by step. Weeks passed. Her confidence grew. She started noticing that co-workers greeted her with more respect. Some interns asked for her help. Even Mariah began involving her in discussions she wasn't required to join. She didn't rush to feel proud. She allowed the growth to settle quietly. One Friday afternoon, as she packed her things to leave, Mariah walked over and placed a folder on her desk. Inside was an internal email praising her performance on a recent analysis project. The message wasn't long, but it was sincere. Mariah looked at her with a calm smile. You should believe in the work you do. You have earned this place. She nodded slowly, letting those words rest in her heart. She walked out of the office that evening with a lighter step and a clearer mind. For the first time, she wasn't just imagining a bigger life. She was stepping into it. The internship kept her busy, but not overwhelmed. She was learning how to read patterns in numbers, how to understand a company's behavior from a single report, and how to catch the little mistakes that others overlooked. Mariah trusted her enough to assign small independent tasks now. Nothing complicated, but enough to test her focus. She completed every assignment with care, not because she wanted praise, but because she respected the opportunity she had worked so hard to earn. Outside the office, her routine stayed the same. She woke early, attended classes, worked her shifts, then came home to the same small studio that had watched her struggle and grow. Every night she spread her notes across the table and reviewed what she learned. She didn't memorize facts. She absorbed them. She didn't chase perfection. She chased clarity. One afternoon her professor pulled her aside after class. He told her the department was recommending students for a financial research competition. It wasn't widely advertised because only a few from each college were selected. When he handed her the information sheet, she stared at it as if it might disappear. She never imagined she would be invited into something like this. Her professor smiled at her surprise. You should try. You work harder than you think. She nodded slowly, unsure of whether to feel proud or overwhelmed. On the bus ride home she held the paper in her lap, reading every line. It required a detailed case study and a small presentation. She wasn't comfortable with public speaking, but she wasn't someone who turned away from growth either. By the time she reached her stop, she had made up her mind. She would try. Over the next 2 weeks she built the case study with the same discipline she used in everything else. She visited the campus library before work. She stayed late in the office after her internship hours ended. Mariah noticed her dedication but didn't interrupt. She knew the look of someone who was building something quietly and didn't want to be distracted. The night before the submission deadline, she sat in her studio, reading through her work one last time. Her room was quiet except for the soft buzz of the old refrigerator. She didn't feel nervous. She felt steady, the kind of steady that comes from knowing you have done everything you could. She uploaded her file and closed her laptop, letting out a long breath. The next morning, she arrived at the office early. Mariah waved her over and told her a senior analyst wanted to speak with her. She followed Mariah through the hallway, unsure of what to expect. When she stepped into the analyst's office, the man looked up from his screen and motioned for her to sit. He told her he had reviewed one of the reports she worked on with Mariah. He appreciated her attention to detail and asked if she would be interested in shadowing the team for a new project. She almost didn't breathe for a moment. This was the kind of opportunity interns rarely received. She thanked him calmly, but she couldn't hide the gratitude in her eyes. Later that week, the financial research competition announced the selected students. She opened her email slowly, preparing herself for either outcome. Congratulations. You have been chosen to participate. She covered her mouth with one hand, letting the moment settle gently. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She sat still and let herself feel the weight of the moment. Her work was being seen. Her effort was being recognized. Her name was being considered in rooms she never expected to enter. When she told Mariah, the woman simply nodded with a proud smile. You earned this. Not by chance. By discipline. That night she walked home from the bus stop with her shoulders slightly lifted. The air felt different on her skin. The street lights glowed a little warmer. She wasn't imagining it. She was experiencing what progress feels like when you finally start stepping into the woman you're meant to become. She reached her apartment and stood for a moment before unlocking the door. The little studio that once felt like a cage now felt like a quiet witness. It had seen her struggle, her exhaustion, her long nights, her discipline, and her small victories. She turned on the lamp, placed her bag down, and sat at her desk. She opened a new notebook page and wrote a single line. My name is reaching places my fear was once afraid of. She closed the notebook gently. She had no idea how far that truth would carry her, but she was ready for the next step. The financial research competition became the center of her evenings. She spent hours refining charts, rewriting explanations, and practicing her presentation quietly in her room. She didn't try to make it perfect. She focused on making it clear. Clarity mattered more to her than showing off. She wanted her work to feel honest, the same way she lived her life. On the day of the competition, she arrived early and sat in the hallway with her notes resting softly in her lap. Students from other colleges walked past her with confident laughter, crisp suits, and polished speeches. She didn't compare herself. Comparison had never helped her rise. Discipline had. She breathed slowly, grounding herself the way she always did before stepping into something new. When her turn came, she entered the room with calm steps. The judges listened as she explained her case study, her voice steady, her posture straight. She didn't rush. She didn't stumble. She spoke like someone who built her knowledge brick by brick and wasn't afraid to stand beside it. When she finished, one of the judges nodded with genuine interest. She felt her chest warm as she left the room. Not with pride but with relief. She had shown up fully. She had given what she had. That was enough. Days passed before the results were announced. She didn't check her email obsessively. She continued her internship, attended classes, and worked her shifts. Her life didn't pause for outcomes. She kept moving, trusting the process more than the result. Then one afternoon, while she was restocking shelves at work, her phone buzzed with a notification. She wiped her hands quickly and opened the email. Her breath caught in her chest. First place. Her name at the top of the list. She leaned against a shelf for a moment, letting her heart settle. She didn't cry, though her eyes stung. She didn't celebrate loudly. She whispered a soft thank you to God, holding the phone close as if it carried a part of her younger self who needed to see this. She returned to work with her spirit floating quietly above exhaustion. The next morning at the internship office, people greeted her differently. A few interns who rarely acknowledged her now smiled. Someone placed a small congratulatory note on her desk. Even the senior analyst walked over and shook her hand. They had read the announcement. Her name had reached them before she even arrived. It felt surreal. Not the praise itself, but the realization that her effort had grown legs and traveled ahead of her. Mariah requested a short meeting later that day. She entered the small conference room and sat across from her mentor. Mariah looked at her with an expression that held pride, respect, and something softer. "I am not easily impressed. But you impressed me." She didn't know how to respond. Her throat tightened slightly, but she kept her composure. Mariah continued, explaining that senior staff had noticed her performance and wanted her to take on higher-level tasks. Not full projects yet, but deeper learning opportunities. She nodded slowly, feeling both gratitude and responsibility settle on her shoulders. That evening on the bus ride home, she watched the city pass by the window. The streetlights blurred into soft streaks as the bus moved. She remembered the girl she once was, the one who counted pennies, saved coins, took buses that arrived late and broke down in the heat. She remembered nights when she felt invisible. Now she was being seen, not because she tried to stand out, but because she worked quietly until her work spoke louder than the doubts around her. When she reached home, she unlocked her studio and stepped inside. The room felt different again, like it was stretching to fit the woman she was becoming. She placed her bag on the table and sat down slowly, letting the silence greet her. Without thinking, she opened her notebook and wrote a simple line. "Hard work listens before it speaks. And when it speaks, people hear it clearly." She closed the notebook, rested her hands in her lap, and let her breath deepen. She didn't know what opportunities would come next, but she felt prepared in a way she hadn't felt before. She knew her worth now. She knew her growth wasn't temporary. She knew she was building a life she once prayed for in quiet moments. A soft vibration from her phone interrupted her thoughts. It was an email from the internship department. She opened it slowly. "Senior management would like to meet with you regarding a potential long-term opportunity." She stared at the screen, allowing the moment to land with full weight. This was no longer about proving herself. This was about stepping into a future she once believed belonged only to other people. She placed the phone down and whispered to the empty room, "Be ready for the next door." And she was. The meeting with senior management weighed on her mind the entire weekend. She didn't feel scared. She felt aware. Opportunities like this didn't come often, and when they did, they usually arrived wrapped inside new responsibilities. She spent Sunday evening preparing quietly. She reviewed her internship notes, organized her email drafts, and ironed the blouse she planned to wear. She didn't tell anyone about the meeting. She carried the moment with the same privacy she carried her struggles, letting it unfold in silence. Monday morning arrived with soft light and cool air. She stepped into the office with steady confidence. The receptionist smiled at her with a kind of recognition she wasn't used to. It surprised her at first, then reminded her that people saw more than she realized. She took the elevator to the top floor, feeling the quiet hum beneath her feet. She inhaled deeply and stepped out when the doors opened. The senior manager's office was bright, spacious, and orderly. Books lined the shelves. Stacks of organized files sat neatly on one side of the desk. He looked up when she entered and motioned for her to sit. She kept her posture straight, her hands gently folded in her lap. He asked about her experience so far. She answered honestly. He asked about her goals. She spoke clearly, without embellishing her plans. She didn't try to impress him with perfect answers. She let her sincerity speak for her, the same way it always had. Then he placed a folder in front of her. Inside was a detailed outline for a new project. It involved analyzing a small company's quarterly trends and assisting a junior analyst with the report. It was more responsibility than most interns ever received. Her heart warmed, but she didn't rush to accept. He explained that this project would test her ability to handle pressure. It would require discipline, late hours, and careful attention. She listened quietly, absorbing his words with full awareness. When he finished, she closed the folder gently and looked at him with a steady expression. "I am willing to take this on, and I will give it my best." He nodded, satisfied. The meeting ended with a handshake and a promise to send her the full instructions by the end of the day. She left the room with calm steps, feeling both proud and humbled. She didn't celebrate. She didn't let her excitement take over. She stayed balanced, knowing the real work was just beginning. Downstairs, Mariah waited near her desk with crossed arms and a soft smile. Mariah already knew. News traveled quickly in offices like this. She approached her mentor, unsure of what she expected to hear. Mariah handed her a small sticky note with the words "Do it well" written in careful letters. She held the note for a moment, letting the message settle. The following days transformed her routine. She balanced her internship responsibilities with her part-time job and school assignments. She wrote financial models at her desk, then headed straight to the grocery store, shelves and boxes waiting for her. She returned home late at night, ate simple meals, then studied until her eyelids grew heavy. Her life became a cycle of movement and focus, each day filled with small tasks that pulled her closer to a future she was still shaping. She never complained. She never told anyone how tired she felt. She didn't expect the world to applaud effort. She believed effort spoke for itself. As she worked on the new project, she noticed something interesting. Junior analysts she once felt intimidated by now asked her for input. They respected her observations. They gave her room to speak. The office that once felt too large now felt natural. She walked the hallways without shrinking into the background. Her work gave her a presence she had never experienced before. One afternoon, while reviewing a financial pattern, she caught an inconsistency in a small data entry. It was the kind of mistake that could shift the final numbers in a report. She brought it to Mariah, expecting a quick correction. Instead, Mariah took her seriously and walked her to the senior analyst's office. He reviewed the data, nodded, and credited her with keeping the report accurate. She didn't smile. She didn't blush. She simply said thank you. Inside, however, something powerful settled. Her confidence was no longer fragile. It was growing roots. That evening, she rode the bus home feeling calm and steady. The passing lights reflected softly on her window. She thought about the girl she once was, sitting on this same bus with a bag full of groceries and overdue bills in her pocket. That girl felt far away now, but she honored her. She honored the strength it took to survive those years. When she reached her building, she climbed the stairs to her studio and stood quietly in the doorway for a moment. The room felt small, but her dreams no longer did. She placed her bag down, removed her shoes, and sat on her bed with her notebook in her lap. She wrote a single sentence. "I am not afraid of rooms I used to feel unworthy of." She let the words settle on the page, then closed the notebook gently. Something inside her had shifted for good. She no longer questioned her place in the world she wanted to enter. She had earned her chair at the table, and she was ready for the next challenge waiting behind the next door. The new project demanded more from her than anything she had handled before. It wasn't the difficulty of the numbers that challenged her. It was the weight of knowing her work would reach people far above the intern level. Every morning she arrived early, opened her laptop, and studied every detail of the company she was assigned. She learned their patterns, their mistakes, their strengths, and the subtle signs that hinted at financial trouble. She worked quietly, absorbing information with the same hunger she once had while studying by the dim light in her tiny studio. Mariah watched her closely during those weeks. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. She wanted to see how far this young intern could go when pushed beyond comfort. The more Mariah observed, the more she realized that this was not an ordinary intern. She was consistent, focused, calm under pressure. Someone who listened more than she spoke, yet delivered more than she promised. Days turned into late evenings. She stayed after hours, not because she was told to, but because she refused to turn in careless work. She reviewed data line by line until her eyes grew tired. She corrected small errors the system overlooked. She reorganized the presentation charts so the story behind the numbers was easier to understand. She did not rush. She did not expect anyone to notice her extra effort. She simply believed that doing things well was its own form of discipline. At home, her body felt the exhaustion. She sometimes sat on her bed for long minutes before finding the strength to prepare dinner. The studio that once felt manageable now felt too cramped for her growing responsibilities. She cooked simple meals, stretched her legs, and whispered prayers for strength before opening her laptop again. She did not complain. She knew she was building something she had dreamed of for years. One evening at the office, She was reviewing the quarterly cash flow when she noticed a pattern that didn't align with the previous reports. It was subtle, almost hidden, but her instincts caught it. She studied it carefully, cross-checked the spreadsheets, and realized that the company might be undershooting their growth potential. Instead of ignoring the anomaly, she created a small side report explaining the potential issue and attached it to her main assignment. She didn't include it to show off. She included it because it mattered. The next morning, when the junior analyst reviewed her work, he paused. He read her side note twice, then carried the report to Mariah's office. Within minutes, Mariah called her in. She entered the room with calm steps, unsure of what to expect. Mariah pointed to the highlighted section. "How did you catch this?" She explained the pattern she saw. "No elegance. No pride. Just clarity." Mariah leaned back in her chair and studied her with new respect. The junior analyst nodded with approval. This is the kind of detail people get paid a lot of money to notice. She didn't allow herself to smile, though her chest warmed. She thanked them softly and returned to her desk. She wasn't thinking about praise. She was thinking about the next steps of the project. Later that week, the senior manager requested a meeting to review her findings. She entered the conference room and listened as he asked questions about her thought process. She answered each one steadily. When he finished, he told her something she didn't expect. "If this projection turns out accurate, it may influence our next quarter strategy." Her breath caught for a moment. Not from fear, but from the realization that her work could carry real impact. She sat still, absorbing the weight of his words. After the meeting, she walked out of the conference room with a deeper sense of purpose than she had ever known. That evening, she arrived home late, her body tired but her spirit steady. She placed her bag on the chair, washed her face, and sat quietly at the edge of her bed. The room was dim. The street lamp outside cast a soft glow through the window, creating long shadows across the floor. She opened her notebook and wrote a few lines to ease her mind. "Pressure is not the enemy. Pressure is the mirror that shows who you really are." She closed the notebook and lay back on her pillow. For a moment she listened to the city outside, the distant sound of traffic, and the faint hum of the laundromat below. She remembered how she once counted coins in this same room, stretching every dollar just to make it through the month. Now she was preparing financial projections that leaders would read. She did not rush to feel proud. She chose to feel grateful. Grateful for the journey. Grateful for the discipline that kept her steady. Grateful for the girl she once was, who refused to quit even when life felt heavy. She drifted into sleep knowing something important. She was no longer just surviving. She was rising. And the world was beginning to notice. The office felt different the moment she walked in that morning. Not because anything around her had changed, but because something inside her had settled into place. She moved with a steadiness that made people turn their heads for a moment longer than usual. Her posture was grounded. Her eyes were focused. Her presence felt stronger, even though she didn't try to make it known. She went straight to her desk, opened her laptop, and started her work without looking around for a single sign of approval. A few interns whispered about the presentation she had helped adjust the week before. They weren't angry or jealous. They were curious. They sensed something about her they couldn't name. She didn't join their conversations. She didn't sit with them in the break room. She simply stayed in her lane, giving her time and energy to the work that mattered. People often mistake quietness for weakness. She was teaching the room that silence can also be strength. Midday, Mariah asked her to join a team meeting. She wasn't usually invited to this one. Senior staff filled the room, and the interns usually listened from outside. Today she was asked to sit at the table. She took her seat calmly, notebook ready, watching how people spoke and how decisions moved from one person to another. When her name was mentioned, the room grew quiet for a second. Mariah explained how her observation about the company's growth potential had helped redirect the entire financial projection. She didn't exaggerate it. She simply told the truth. People turned to look at her, some with surprised eyebrows, others with respect. She didn't shrink. She didn't smile nervously. She held her pen steady and listened. After the meeting ended, a senior analyst approached her in the hallway and nodded toward her notebook. "You see things most interns don't notice. Keep that skill sharp." She thanked him softly. It was the kind of acknowledgement she once prayed for during nights counted by coins and quiet tears. Now she received it without letting it change her sense of self. Compliments were welcome, but they were not her fuel. Her fuel was discipline. That evening, while reviewing another project, she noticed a small inconsistency in a vendor's invoice records. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't anything that would make headlines. But it mattered. She highlighted the section and sent a calm message to the junior analyst, explaining the possible oversight. He replied within minutes, asking how she caught it so quickly. She responded with the same simple line she always used. I read slowly. The truth was deeper. She read with lived experience. She understood what it felt like when small mistakes cost people their peace. She had learned to pay attention because life had forced her to. When she stepped outside after work, the sky was tinted with soft orange light. The breeze felt cool against her face as she walked toward the bus stop. She carried no pride, only a quiet sense of arrival. Not arrival to success, but arrival to herself. On the bus, she watched the city passing by. People rushing, laughing, arguing, living their own battles. She held her bag close and thought about how far she had come since those nights in the studio counting coins. She remembered her notebook, the budgeting plans, the dreams she scribbled when no one else believed she had a chance. Back home, she made a small bowl of pasta, placed it on her desk, and opened her laptop. She didn't turn on music. She didn't let distractions pull at her. She reviewed her day, then opened her notebook and added a new line. You are no longer trying to prove what you can do. You are becoming who you are meant to be. Her eyes softened as she read the sentence twice. She understood something important that night. Growth wasn't only about new skills or rising positions. Growth was the quiet shift inside you when you begin to trust your own strength. She felt that shift now. Before going to sleep, she cleaned her small studio, folded her clothes, and prepared her bag for the next day. These small rituals kept her grounded. They reminded her of the discipline that saved her when life felt heavy. She lay down in bed with the window cracked open just enough to let the city sounds drift in. A siren somewhere far away, the hum of traffic, the faint laughter of people walking by. All the noise that once made her feel lonely now sounded like proof that she belonged to this world in her own way. She didn't know how much more her life would change in the months ahead. She didn't know that her online videos would soon reach people across the country. She didn't know that a single message from a stranger would shift her entire future. She didn't know the scale of the empire she would one day build. All she knew was this. She was rising quietly. She was rising steadily. She was rising with purpose. And this time, she wasn't going to doubt it. She woke early the next morning, moving through her room with the same calm rhythm she always carried. Nothing in her space looked different. The same desk with its chipped corner. The same window with the quiet city view. The same notebook resting near her lamp. But something inside her had shifted. Her mind felt wider. Her confidence felt steadier. She reached for her phone only after she had finished making tea, giving herself a moment before facing whatever waited online. When she checked her notifications, she didn't blink in surprise. 5 views, 2 likes, 1 comment. The numbers were small, but the sincerity was strong. The comment was from a woman who said she had been scared to check her bank account for months. Her video helped her breathe again. That was enough to make the morning feel softer. She set the phone down and continued her routine with a quiet smile. At the internship, she kept her focus on her tasks. She completed reports with the same precision she practiced since day one. When co-workers talked loudly about weekend plans, she kept her head down and worked. Not out of isolation, but out of intention. She wanted to protect the small spark forming inside her. Growth felt sacred now, and she didn't want to share it before it became strong enough to stand on its own. During lunch, she opened her notebook. Instead of writing financial formulas, she wrote the faces she imagined watching her videos. Women rushing between shifts. Students struggling to stretch money through the semester. Single parents holding their families together one paycheck at a time. She didn't want to become another voice that talked down to people. She wanted her content to feel like a warm hand guiding someone through fog. That night she recorded another video at her desk. She adjusted her phone, cleared her throat, and spoke about saving small amounts each week. Her tone stayed calm. Her sentences stayed clear. She didn't try to sound like an expert. She spoke like a woman who had lived this truth. When she replayed the video, she noticed things she wanted to improve. Lighting, volume, angles. But she didn't chase perfection. She posted it exactly as it was. Within 3 days, she noticed something surprising. Her small videos were being shared consistently. People weren't watching by accident. They were looking for her. Comment sections filled with gratitude and simple questions. How do I start saving? How do I stop overspending? How do I fix mistakes I made years ago? She answered every question gently, respecting the courage it took for people to speak openly about their financial fears. Her own confidence grew with each message. Not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. One evening she walked home from work and felt a strange clarity settle in her chest. She wasn't just posting videos. She was helping people in ways she once needed help herself. At the community center, she attended a workshop with the same woman in the purple blouse. This time she sat closer to the front. When the workshop ended, she stayed behind to help organize papers and clean the tables. The woman thanked her with a warm smile. "You should teach one day," she said. People listened to voices grounded in real life. The compliment sat with her all evening. She didn't know if she was ready to teach. She didn't know if she deserved that kind of trust. But the idea didn't scare her. It felt like a soft door opening somewhere in the future. By the end of the month, her videos gained a small but loyal audience. A few hundred followers, then a few thousand. The numbers didn't overwhelm her. What mattered were the stories behind them. A woman saying she finally saved $50. A student saying he didn't feel ashamed anymore. A mother saying she felt hopeful for the first time in years. She recorded new videos twice a week, always in her small studio, always at her desk. She didn't need fancy equipment. She didn't need a perfect backdrop. She needed honesty. Her voice carried the kind of warmth people trusted instinctively. At the internship, her work kept improving. She noticed patterns faster. She understood reports more deeply. Mariah started giving her tasks that were normally meant for junior analysts. When she asked why, Mariah smiled softly. "You think differently. You pay attention in a way most people don't. Use that. Don't hide it." That evening, she sat on her bed with her phone glowing beside her. One of her newest videos had reached far more people than usual. Not viral but growing fast. She scrolled through the comments slowly, her eyes softening with each message. She didn't chase fame. She didn't chase numbers. She chased impact, and impact was beginning to answer back. Before sleeping, she added a new line to her notebook. "You are becoming a voice people lean on. Use it with grace." She closed the notebook gently, turned off the lamp, and rested with the window slightly open. Her life hadn't changed on the outside. She still lived in the same room, rode the same bus, and counted every dollar with care. But inside, a new foundation was forming. Strong, intentional, honest. She didn't know that this foundation would one day grow into an empire. All she knew was that her rise had begun. Quietly, gently, steadily. And she was ready for whatever came next. The months that followed moved gently at first, then faster than she expected. Her days stayed full with internship tasks, but her evenings belonged to her growing online work. She didn't rush either world. She moved through both with the same steady discipline she carried since that laundromat apartment. The balance was challenging, but it felt right. For the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving. She was building. At the office, Mariah trusted her more each week. She was assigned detailed reports, quick reviews, and small financial summaries that required sharp attention. She handled each task with calm focus, surprising some of the analysts who had overlooked her in the beginning. She didn't brag or mention her online platform. She stayed grounded, knowing that true respect comes from consistent effort, not loud announcements. Her online community kept growing quietly. Every time she posted a new budgeting tip, people shared it with friends. She answered questions late into the night, guiding people who felt lost in numbers or ashamed of past mistakes. She saw herself in every message and tried to respond with the same compassion she once needed. The comments filled with gratitude, and each one reminded her why she started. Her voice was becoming a place where people felt safe. All she knew was that her rise had begun. Quietly, gently, steadily, and she was ready for whatever came next. The months that followed moved gently at first, then faster than she expected. Her days stayed full with internship tasks, but her evenings belonged to her growing online work. She didn't rush either world. She moved through both with the same steady discipline she carried since that laundromat apartment. The balance was challenging, but it felt right. For the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving. She was building. At the office, Mariah trusted her more each week. She was assigned detailed reports, quick reviews, and small financial summaries that required sharp attention. She handled each task with calm focus, surprising some of the analysts who had overlooked her in the beginning. She didn't brag or mention her online platform. She stayed grounded, knowing that true respect comes from consistent effort, not loud announcements. Her online community kept growing quietly. Every time she posted a new budgeting tip, people shared it with friends. She answered questions late into the night, guiding people who felt lost in numbers or ashamed of past mistakes. She saw herself in every message and tried to respond with the same compassion she once needed. The comments filled with gratitude, and each one reminded her why she started. Her voice was becoming a place where people felt safe. One evening, after finishing a long workday, she filmed a video about debt in her calm, steady tone. She explained how debt wasn't a sign of failure, but a situation that could be managed with patience. She kept her voice soft, her explanations simple. When she posted it, she didn't expect much. But the next morning, her notifications kept climbing. The video wasn't viral, but it was touching something real. People thanked her for speaking in a way that didn't make them feel judged. She read the comments slowly and let the gratitude sink into her heart. Her platform passed 10,000 followers, then 20, then 30. The growth wasn't explosive. It was steady. She respected that. Slow growth meant people were coming for the right reasons. They weren't following trends. They were following truth. At the internship, her supervisors called her in for a performance review. She sat across from them with steady hands, listening to their feedback carefully. They spoke about her attention to detail, her calm nature under pressure, and her ability to understand financial problems faster than most new interns. She nodded quietly, grateful but composed. When they offered her a full-time position at the end of the internship, she accepted with a soft smile. She didn't cry. She didn't lose her breath. She simply acknowledged the moment with the dignity it deserved. That night, she sat on her small bed with her notebook open. She looked at the page where she had written her 5-year plan months earlier. Some goals were already happening. Some were closer than she realized. She added a new line carefully. You are building 2 worlds at once. Move with intention. Her energy stayed balanced for weeks. By day she worked on financial reports with sharp clarity. By night she spoke to her growing audience about saving money, building habits, and trusting their future. Her messages weren't filled with pressure or perfection. They were shaped from the truth she lived. One afternoon, Mariah approached her desk with a small folder. I want you to look through this, she said. It's not part of your official tasks, but I think you're ready. Inside were case studies from past clients. Notes filled with mistakes, victories, panic, and recovery. She read them with the same calm focus she used as a student. When she met with Mariah later, she asked thoughtful questions that surprised the older woman. You see things clearly, Mariah said. Keep going. This field needs minds like yours. The words stayed with her the whole drive home. Her account continued to grow. She reached 50,000 followers, then 70. People began messaging her for private help. She didn't offer one-on-one consultations yet. She didn't feel ready. She wanted to create something sustainable instead of reacting to every request. She spent evenings researching, planning, and shaping her ideas into something that could serve thousands at once. One night she posted a video about emergency funds. It was simple, honest, and practical. The next morning, she woke to a flood of messages. Women said they cried watching it. Students said they wished someone had taught them this earlier. Busy mothers said they finally found a starting point. She didn't celebrate loudly. She didn't post about milestones. She sat in her room with her hands folded, letting the weight of her impact settle slowly inside her. A few days later, she received a message from a woman who worked long hospital shifts. "I'm finally able to save without fear. Thank you for speaking to me like I matter." She read it twice. Then she closed her phone, walked to the window, and watched the traffic move across the city. She remembered the girl she once was. The one who counted coins alone in a quiet studio. She felt a deep tenderness for that version of herself. That girl didn't know she was building something that would touch lives she would never meet. The next month brought her biggest shift. Her budgeting guide, the one she created slowly and carefully, began spreading across her community. People bought it with trust. They recommended it to others. The guide brought in more income than she had ever earned in a single month in her life. But she didn't rush to quit her job. She didn't dream about luxury. She stayed grounded. She saved every extra dollar. She treated the new income with the same respect she treated her grocery store paychecks years earlier. By the time winter approached, she had built a foundation stronger than anything she could have imagined. A stable job, a growing audience, a trusted guide, a rising presence, a calm mind. One night, sitting at her desk with her notebook open, she wrote a small line at the top of a fresh page. "You are not rising alone. People are rising with you." She stared at the words for a moment, feeling their truth. Her rise wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady, honest, and purposeful. And it was only getting started. Her budgeting guide didn't just sell. It spread. Slowly at first, then with a quiet force she never expected. People shared it in group chats, at workplaces, inside women's circles, even in college study halls. She read every message that reached her inbox. Some were short thank yous. Some were long paragraphs filled with relief. Some felt like confessions from people carrying heavy financial fear for years. It humbled her deeply, because she knew what fear felt like. She knew what confusion felt like. She knew what it meant to stand at a grocery shelf choosing one thing and letting go of another. Now her words were giving people clarity. Her calm voice was helping them breathe. She created more videos, not rushed or polished, just honest. She filmed them in her small room with soft evening light. Her explanations stayed simple, shaped by experience instead of textbooks. She didn't want to intimidate anyone. She wanted people to feel safe learning. Her platform kept growing. 100,000 followers, then 200, then 500,000. She didn't chase numbers, but she respected the responsibility that came with them. She replied to as many comments as she could. She answered questions thoughtfully, never making anyone feel foolish or behind. At her full-time job, she continued rising quietly. Mariah saw her potential long before the numbers showed it, and guided her with quiet strength. She learned about investments, market shifts, client strategies, and long-term planning. She grew sharper each month, absorbing knowledge with a calm depth that was becoming her signature. Her paycheck didn't define her progress, but it gave her room to breathe. She saved with discipline and invested slowly. She treated her finances like a garden, watering it gently instead of chasing fast results. One evening, while scrolling through her messages, she saw something that made her pause. A woman wrote, "You saved my marriage. Money was tearing us apart. Your guide helped us talk without fear." She held the phone still for a long moment. She never imagined her work would reach into someone's home like that. She whispered a small thank you into the quiet room and kept reading. Another message said, "I grew up thinking I was bad with money. You made me feel capable for the first time." She closed her eyes, letting the words settle in her chest. Her voice wasn't just teaching. Her voice was healing. That week she filmed a longer video, explaining how financial peace comes from small decisions repeated consistently. She talked about patience, choice, and discipline. She didn't raise her voice once. She spoke as if she were sitting across the table from someone who needed reassurance. When the video posted, it gathered thousands of shares within hours. People weren't following her because she sounded like an expert. They were following her because she sounded human. Her first brand collaboration request arrived that same week. She read the email slowly, then closed it. The product wasn't something her audience needed. She refused politely. Over the next few months, more brands reached out. She turned down almost all of them. She protected her voice. She protected her audience. She protected her mission. If something didn't feel honest, she let it go. Meanwhile, her online earnings continued to grow. Her guides sold consistently. Her platform expanded across new social spaces. Blogs wrote about her. A financial educator mentioned her in a live stream. A college professor shared her budgeting videos as recommended material for new students. The impact rippled through places she had never seen. One evening, she sat at her desk and opened her banking app. The numbers felt surreal, not because they were large but because of how they arrived. Not through shortcuts. Not through luck. Through purpose, clarity, and steady effort. But she didn't feel overwhelmed or shocked. She felt grounded. She remembered the girl at 19 who counted her coins with careful fingers. That girl was still inside her. She guided every decision. Within months, she released 2 more guides. One for beginners. One for families. Both affordable. Both simple. Both shaped from real experience. She didn't want to become someone who created expensive products that left people more stressed than before. She promised herself that everything she built would serve people who once stood where she stood. Her community reached 1 million followers quietly one night while she was brushing her hair in the bathroom. She saw the notification later and sat on her bed slowly, staring at the number. The lights were soft. The room was silent. She felt something rising in her chest. Not pride. Not shock. Something steadier. Gratitude. She made a short thank you video the next day, speaking softly the way she always did, reminding people that progress is built one choice at a time. She didn't celebrate with a huge announcement. She celebrated by staying consistent. A few weeks later, an email arrived from a financial conference asking her to speak. They had followed her platform from the beginning. They saw how she explained money with dignity. They saw how her community trusted her. They wanted her voice on their stage. She hesitated for a moment, because the idea of speaking in front of hundreds felt heavy. But then she remembered the workshop she attended years ago. The woman in the purple blouse. The people who looked at money with fear. The conversations that helped her grow. She knew she needed to show up now. She accepted the invitation with a steady heart. The day she walked into that conference hall, she felt the same calm she used to feel at her studio desk. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't overwhelmed. She knew her purpose. When she spoke, the room went quiet. People listened. People nodded. People took notes quickly. Her voice carried warmth through the space, settling into hearts the way it always did through a phone screen. After she finished, the audience stood up. They applauded. Some even wiped their eyes. A young woman approached her and whispered, "You changed my life. Thank you for seeing women like us." She held those words gently, like something sacred. That night in her hotel room, she sat by the window looking at the city below. She thought of all the mornings she worked quietly, the nights she studied in her tiny studio, the days she walked into the grocery store with tired steps. She thought of her notebook filled with budgeting plans. She thought of the scholarship letter, the bus rides, the late-night videos, the fear she carried then, the strength she carried now. She folded her hands in her lap and breathed slowly. Her rise wasn't sudden. It wasn't noisy. It wasn't accidental. It was built the same way she built everything else. One effort at a time. One act of discipline at a time. One quiet choice at a time. And even though she didn't know it yet, this movement she created was the foundation of the empire she would one day lead. It was the beginning of something far bigger than she imagined. Her rise didn't look like a movie scene. It didn't explode overnight or shake the world loudly. It grew the same way she always grew. Quietly. Patiently. With discipline shaping every choice she made. By the time 2 years passed, her life had stretched far beyond anything she once imagined when she sat in that tiny studio counting coins on her desk. Her online community kept expanding. What began as a few budgeting videos became a library of lessons people trusted. She didn't teach from theory. She taught from truth. Her voice carried the weight of someone who lived every step she described. Women wrote to her saying they finally paid off bills without shame. College students said her videos helped them stay afloat. Some even said her words made them feel less alone. She created more guides, each one shaped with the same intention. Affordable. Clear. Simple. She wanted women who struggled the most to be able to access help without choosing between guidance or groceries. She filmed videos late at night, sitting near her small window with warm lighting that softened her face. Her tone never changed. Calm, patient, human. At work, she grew into her position with a natural confidence. She didn't rush for promotions or try to impress anyone. She learned. She asked questions. She stayed consistent. Her reports became sharper. Her financial analyses became cleaner. She began assisting on cases that required precision, and senior analysts trusted her notes without hesitation. Even the interns looked at her differently, as if she had quietly become a guide for them too. Layla remained one of her strongest influences. Sometimes they met in small conference rooms, sometimes in the hallway, sometimes in the parking lot when they both stayed late. Layla never lectured. She taught with small sentences that left a mark. Choose your pace wisely. Protect your purpose. Build with patience so nothing can shake you later. Those lessons followed her home every night. Her online work kept growing. 10,000 followers turned into 50,000. 50 turned into 100. 100 turned into 500,000. Then 1,000,000. She didn't chase attention. She focused on service. People felt that. They trusted that. When she walked into her apartment after work and saw new messages, she read them with quiet gratitude. She knew what it meant for someone to search for guidance at the end of a long day. She hired a small team to help her manage everything. A designer who understood her tone. A virtual assistant who also came from a background of financial struggle. A young editor who believed in creating content that was respectful and clear. They worked together without pressure, growing slowly, honoring the mission she started from honesty. Her first year in business brought stability. Her second year brought trust. Her third year brought momentum. She began speaking at workshops, sometimes inside small community centers, sometimes at local colleges. Women waited after each session to talk to her, holding notebooks filled with questions. She answered everyone with patience. Some women cried. Some held her hand. Some admitted they never believed they could change their lives until they heard her voice. Her income grew, not just from videos and guides but from quiet, careful investments she made over time. She didn't chase risky opportunities. She invested the way she lived. Steadily, calmly, with discipline. Her savings grew into something solid. Her investments began giving returns. Her online earnings became stable enough to build a foundation she never had as a girl. Around her 5th year, her platform reached a level that no longer felt like a simple page. It felt like a movement. People across the country quoted her videos. Teachers used her guides in classrooms. Families sat together to follow her budgeting systems. She didn't seek attention, but attention kept finding her. She opened a small financial education firm focused on helping women navigate money with respect and clarity. She hired women from different backgrounds and trained them to teach with dignity. The firm grew quickly, not because of heavy marketing but because people trusted the heart behind it. Within a year, the firm doubled. In 18 months, it became one of the most recognized names in accessible financial education. She moved out of her small studio and into a comfortable apartment. Years later, she upgraded again, choosing a penthouse not for luxury, but for space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to build. Through all the growth, she stayed grounded. She still woke up early. She still cooked simple meals. She still kept the old habits that shaped her discipline. She didn't lose herself in numbers or attention. She remembered the 19-year-old girl who counted coins with tired hands. She remembered the grocery store manager who underestimated her. She remembered nights she cried quietly, promising herself she would not break. By her 6th year, the world saw her as a financial leader. Not because she had the loudest voice, but because she had the truest one. She didn't push shame. She didn't chase applause. She built trust. And trust built everything else. Her name began to appear in magazines. She was invited to panels. She spoke at conferences that once felt unreachable. Her business partners included companies she once dreamed of affording. Her investments matured into properties and long-term assets. Her savings turned into a portfolio that grew even when she slept. Then one evening, sitting alone in her quiet penthouse, She received an email from her firm's advisors. The valuation had crossed $1 billion. She sat still for a long time. She didn't scream. She didn't rush to share it publicly. She didn't even stand up. She breathed in deeply, feeling the weight of her journey settle around her. She wasn't a billionaire because of luck. She wasn't a billionaire because of one video. She became one because she built patiently, with discipline and heart, one step at a time. She looked out at the city through her tall windows and thought of the girl who once counted pennies to survive another week. That girl was still with her, guiding every decision. She whispered softly, barely audible in the stillness of the room. "You did it. And you did it with integrity." She didn't know that life was about to shift again. She didn't know that wealth would reconnect her to a past she believed she left behind. But she felt it in her spirit. Something was coming, and she was ready for whatever walked toward her next. The night her firm crossed the billion mark felt quiet in a way she didn't expect. There was no celebration in her penthouse, no loud music, no group of people waiting to congratulate her. She sat by the wide windows with a soft blanket across her legs, watching the city lights shimmer below. She held her phone loosely in one hand, reading the message again and again. Billionaire. The word didn't frighten her, and it didn't inflate her. It simply settled beside her like a quiet truth she had been walking toward for years. She closed her phone, folded her hands, and breathed in slowly. She wasn't proud of the number itself. She was proud of the journey that brought her here. Around midnight, her building's concierge called her phone. His voice was polite but slightly uncertain. "Ma'am, someone left a package for you. No name on it. Should I send it up?" She hesitated for a moment. Packages were normal for someone at her level. Brands sent gifts. Conferences sent materials. But unnamed packages made her cautious. Still, something in her chest moved in a way she couldn't explain. "Yes. Please send it." A few minutes later, a knock echoed softly through her hallway. She opened the door and saw a small brown box placed neatly on a silver tray. The concierge had already left. She carried the box inside, set it gently on the kitchen counter, and stared at it for a moment. It was plain. No label. No tape except a simple strip across the top. Her fingers brushed over the cardboard, feeling the rough texture. It reminded her of something she hadn't thought about in years. She opened it slowly. Inside was another box wrapped in a thin sheet of paper. Beneath it lay a white envelope sealed with a careful fold. Her name sat across the front in soft, shaky handwriting. She didn't recognize it. That alone made her chest tighten. She opened the box first. A wave of warmth moved through her as soon as she saw what was inside. Coins. Old coins. Some faded, some scratched, and some bent on the edges. Coins that looked exactly like the ones she used to count in her studio years ago. Her heart pressed against her ribs in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. She reached inside slowly and lifted one coin. The year printed on it was the same as the jar she once kept beside her bed. She closed her eyes for a moment, memories rising gently like quiet shadows. Nights of budgeting with tired hands. Afternoons studying at her tiny desk. Mornings taking the bus before sunrise. She swallowed the lump in her throat and placed the coin back carefully. At the bottom of the box lay something that made her go still. Her old notebook. The same one she kept during her hardest months. She touched the worn cover as if it might crumble under her fingers. When she opened it, she saw her handwriting, her notes, her survival plans. Each page felt like a doorway into another life. Who had this? And how did it return to her now? She finally reached for the envelope. The handwriting inside was small and uneven, as if the writer had taken great care not to ruin the page. "You don't know me, but I knew you before the world did." She read slowly, letting every word sink in. "I lived next door to you in the studio apartment. You never saw me, but I heard you through the wall some nights. I heard you studying. I heard you trying. I heard you fighting for a life you didn't have yet." Her breath softened. "You left this notebook behind the night you moved. You dropped it in the hallway without knowing. I picked it up because it felt wrong to throw away something filled with so much hope." The letter shook gently in her hands. "I didn't return it because I didn't know where you went. And then time passed. Years passed. I kept it because it reminded me that quiet effort can change a life. Your discipline helped me keep going when I had nothing." Her eyes warmed. "When you became successful, I watched from far away. Not as a fan, but as someone who needed proof that someone like me could rise too." She covered her mouth gently as she kept reading. "I waited until I believed you were strong enough to receive these pieces of your past. Not because they define you, but because they shaped you." The last line reached her deeply. "Thank you for showing me that struggle can turn into something beautiful. No signature. No clue. Just truth." She sat there for a long time with the letter resting in her lap, the coins and notebook on the table beside her. The city lights flickered through the window, brushing warm reflections across the kitchen floor. For the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of her journey settle gently inside her chest. Wealth hadn't shaken her. Success hadn't shaken her. But this quiet reminder of where she began moved her in a way she hadn't prepared for. Because she finally understood something she had never imagined. Even when she was at her lowest, even when she thought no one saw her, someone was watching her rise. And in silence, she had been someone's strength. For days, the box stayed open on her dining table. She didn't hide it or pack it away. She let it sit there like a quiet visitor, reminding her of who she used to be. Every time she walked past it, she felt the old notebook pulling at her heart. She remembered the nights she wrote inside it, believing in something she hadn't seen yet. One morning, she placed the notebook gently in her bag and drove across the city toward the neighborhood she once escaped. Her driver followed behind at a respectful distance, but she walked the final block alone. The streets felt familiar but smaller. The buildings looked worn but alive. She climbed the staircase to the second floor, the metal railing cool beneath her fingers. Her old door still had the same dent on the side. She touched it gently, remembering the night she bumped into it while carrying groceries. A few steps away stood the door next to hers. Faded paint, tired hinges, a small welcome mat that had seen better days. She knocked softly. A moment later, an older woman opened the door. Her hair was silver around the edges, and her eyes carried the warmth of someone who had lived through difficult seasons. She stared for a moment, breath catching as she realized who was standing in front of her. "It's you." Her voice cracked. She nodded. "May I come in?" The woman stepped aside immediately. Inside, the apartment was humble and quiet. Old carpet, a small table, a pair of worn curtains that let soft daylight through. It felt like a place held together by patience and faith. They sat at the kitchen table. The older woman kept wiping tears gently with the corner of her sleeve. "I never thought I would see you again." She spoke softly. "Thank you for the letter." The woman shook her head. "No, sweetheart. Thank you. You didn't know it, but your discipline traveled through those thin walls. You helped me survive nights when I didn't think I could." She swallowed carefully and reached for the older woman's hand. "I didn't know anyone was listening." The woman smiled through her tears. "You weren't loud, but your strength was." They talked for nearly an hour. The woman shared small memories from years ago. Nights when she heard her studying late. Mornings when she heard her practicing affirmations softly. Afternoons when she dropped coins on the desk and picked them up one by one. The woman admitted she kept the notebook because it made her feel less alone. It reminded her that someone nearby was trying too. Before leaving, she offered the woman financial help, not out of pity but from respect. The woman refused gently. "Seeing who you became is enough for me." She nodded softly, understanding the dignity in the refusal. She hugged the woman with quiet warmth, then walked down the stairs with a steady heart. When she reached the street, she felt something shift inside her. She wasn't returning as someone who had escaped. She was returning as someone who honored her beginning. That realization stayed with her as she drove away, watching the small neighborhood disappear in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, she felt complete. Her life changed again after that visit. Not suddenly, but with a deeper purpose. She realized the movement she built wasn't about views or money. It was about lifting people the way she once needed to be lifted. She expanded her firm with a new mission built around accessibility and dignity. Free workshops, free financial counseling for single mothers, programs designed for women in shelters, college funds for girls beginning their lives with the same fear she once carried. Her company grew beyond education. It became a place where women walked in with confusion and walked out with confidence. She hired young interns from underserved communities. She created training programs that taught financial basics in simple, human language. She spoke at events that centered Black women's leadership. Her voice traveled farther every year. Her investments grew quietly. Her properties expanded. Her team tripled in size. Journalists wrote about her impact. Educators recommended her courses. Women across the world followed her budgeting systems. She didn't chase attention. She chased clarity. And clarity built her empire. One evening, she stood on her penthouse balcony holding her old notebook in her hands. The city lights glowed like scattered stars below. She traced the faded cover gently and whispered a soft truth into the night. You rose. And you rose with grace. Her story wasn't about becoming a billionaire. It was about becoming a blueprint. A blueprint for every young woman counting coins in a quiet room. A blueprint for every Black woman doubted by small minds. A blueprint for every soul who tried when no one was watching. Her beginning didn't decide her ending. Her discipline did. And her legacy would continue long after her voice rested. Thank you for listening, beautiful soul. This story reminds us that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through the walls of small apartments, through budgeting notebooks and tired hands, through quiet nights filled with hope. If this journey touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Black Women's Soul. Turn on the bell and tell us which city you're watching from. And always remember, your beginning does not decide your ending. Your discipline does.